Hello and welcome back to the Bunny Bear podcast. This is your host, Chloe Daniels, better known as Bear Money Coach. And yeah, this is the podcast where we talk about all things money. We share our money stories, we get bare, we get real honest about money. So today we've got an amazing guest, one that I'm super excited about. I mean, I know I'm excited about all my guests, but like I love the guests when I get to bring on like my friends who are friends in real life, which a lot of these are. But today we're bringing on Delyanne The Money Coach. So Delyanne and I have been friends for about 2 years now, and she's been a huge mentor to me, but also just a great friend who I can call to talk about literally anything. And so I'm really pumped to bring her on this week. So get ready. We're going to have a great episode. In terms of what's going on in my life right now, I've actually gotten to the point, guys, where I kind of think I'm done with this road trip. Now that I know where I want to live, I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go do it. I'm ready to move. So, for those of you who don't realize it, I've decided that I'm moving to San Diego, and I'm seriously so excited. I feel like this is like a lifelong dream of mine. And for literally the longest time, I just told myself that I wasn't allowed to move to California because it's so expensive. It's so impractical. There's, better places to live, not better in terms of like better quality of life, but better that are more practical places to live. And so I kind of just kept telling myself, like, yeah, you can't do that. Maybe someday when you're a multimillionaire, you can move out there. But once I got there, I just felt so happy. I felt like my best self when I was out there. And so I finally decided, you know what, let's throw caution to the wind. Let's freaking do this and try it out. So I'm really stoked. I'm going to try to move out there probably in February. I'm going to, end the road trip in late October, and then I'll be home for the holidays. And then I'm probably going to make my way out to San Diego. Now, originally, I don't even know what's original anymore because I feel like my plans just keep changing. But in my latest email about my life plans, I had told everybody that I decided that next year is going to be like my international travel year. But something about that just didn't feel right. I feel like after this year of moving around every couple of weeks to months, I'm just kind of tired of traveling. Like, I am shockingly enough a creature of habit. I absolutely love a good routine. Like, nothing makes me hornier than a good routine. But I've been robbing myself of that for adventure. And I love adventure almost as much as I love routine. But after 6, 9 months of it, I'm just kind of ready to set down roots somewhere. So I am so grateful that this road trip ended up doing exactly what I needed it to, which is to help me find out where I want to live. And that is San Diego. Now, I am thinking that eventually I might also like to buy property in Portland and potentially base my business out of Oregon because my sister is here. She works for Bear, and I also love the area, especially for hiking, but I don't think I would want to live here full time, which, by the way, as I'm recording this, I am in Portland right now because I don't think I could deal with all the gray days. Like, I love a few gray days thrown in there, but an everyday gray day for like 9 months is not really something I could deal with, I don't think. I think I'd probably get a little bit depressed. So I think a perfect life for me includes living in both of these places. So living in Portland for part of the year and living in San Diego for most of the year, using the property that I purchase in Portland to, rent it out, use it as an Airbnb when I'm not there, but mostly living in San Diego. So that's kind of what I'm thinking will be part 2 of this move to San Diego. But right now, I don't want to put the pressure on myself to figure all of that out all at once. I want to first move to San Diego and then figure out the Portland stuff later on. So that's kind of what's going on in the Bear universe. I am so excited, guys. I feel like this is like a lifelong dream, and I feel like this is such a huge turning point in my life, moving out there. So I think that this is clearly going to be life-changing, but I'm really excited. So that's what I've got going on in my world right now. I also am I feel like I am slowly changing on the inside. I don't know how else to say that. I started reading Untamed by Glennon Doyle this last week. I'm almost finished with it. And I also bought the workbook with it as well. And something about it is like really working on me. And it was because of you guys. You all recommended it on my stories when I was telling you guys that I was kind of going through what I'm going through right now, which is just kind of like this transformation, and a bunch of you recommended this book by Glennon. And so I was like, you know what, let's try it. I had kind of I have a tendency to avoid popular things. And I remember Glennon's book being very popular like 2 years ago. And so I'm like, no, I'm too good for that. I'm too good for popular stuff. I don't even know why that. I guess it's like internalized misogyny of like not being that girl who does all the basic stuff and the other shit. But even the idea of being basic or the idea of giving into popular doesn't make you like better than other people. So it's funny the things that we reveal about ourselves and slowly work through. But anyway, so I finally was like, okay, I will read this book. And I'm loving it. It's so good. It's helping me really discover a few things about myself that actually we mentioned in today's podcast episode when Delyanne and I are talking, who she also happens to be reading this book. So highly recommend it if you're kind of going through this change in your life. If you're trying to be a happier person, if you're trying to live more authentically, it's helped me out a lot. And has also helped me uncover some false beliefs I had about myself as well. So that's what I have got going on. Now, for your money tip of the week, we talk about this briefly in today's podcast episode when we talk about budgeting with Delyanne. But I wanted to talk about budgeting and kind of what my budgeting journey has been. So, when I first started budgeting in October 2018, I was doing what's called a zero-based budget. A zero-based budget is when you essentially assign every dollar a job. And I did that with glee. I got my spreadsheet out and I made a monthly budget and a yearly budget and a biweekly budget. And I used the biweekly budget every 2 weeks. I found out that the monthly budget didn't really work for me. And I eventually implemented a yearly budget as well to basically make sure that I was staying on track for my yearly goals, not just my biweekly goals. Because 2 weeks out of a month or out of a year, it's just a really small picture. I wanted to see the bigger picture. So that's when I started incorporating an annual budget as well, which, by the way, as I'm talking about these, if you want links and videos on how I budget and how I did budget back in the day, go to the links in the show notes and download my free money guide. It's at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/guide. There are multiple videos walking you step by step on how I budgeted, and it'll also give you a link to the budget spreadsheets that I use, and they're free. They're the Google spreadsheets. There's nothing special about them, but they worked wonders for me. So highly recommend you go do that. Go get that for yourself. But anyway, I started off with that zero-based budget, assigning every dollar a job because I liked the data and I really, really needed this big change where I was going from not paying attention to my money at all to literally diving deep and deciding exactly where I want each dollar of mine to go. That helped me out a lot because it was kind of like this reset of just willy-nilly spending money and not having it at all aligned with my values to now making sure every dollar was aligned with my values. That was a really good switch for me. So that's what I started doing. And it worked out really well for me for about 2.5 years. I would say that I did that from October 2018 until this year, really. Once I started on this road trip and my things with my business kind of changed a lot and my income tripled from last year, if we're counting just Clobear income, I realized I didn't really have the same needs to do a zero-based budget anymore. So that's what I also wanted to talk about is maybe the sounds of a zero-based budget sound absolutely awful to you right now. The idea of tracking where every dollar goes, the idea of assigning where every dollar goes in order to align more with your values and your beliefs. But what I would challenge most people to give this a chance is, number one, if you love data, a zero-based budget is one of the best things to do. But two, if you just need a huge change in how your thought process around money works and you need to start seeing money as a tool to living your best life, try a zero-based budget. You do not have to do it forever. You just need to do it for maybe 3 to 6 months to get the mindset shift of thinking about your money as a tool, thinking about your money as a resource, and then you can move into something that's called an anti-budget. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So what I do now is no longer a zero-based budget technically. I kind of do a budget reconciliation at the end of the month. I don't worry about where my money goes during the month. I kind of spend guilt-free because I prioritize investing as much as I can, and then I spend the rest without really worrying about it. So for me, and it's not even as much as I could I invest more than what I'm investing right now? Absolutely. But I am a big proponent of living a balanced life, of living a life that you love, of enjoying the money that you make, enjoying your experience, not just going all ham, not enjoying the experience, and then retiring in 10 years. Like, to me, if you're not enjoying the journey, what's the point of doing it? So for me right now, my goal this year is to invest between $40,000 and $60,000. I've already hit the $40,000. I'm trying to get to $60,000, but that's the goal. And as long as I am hitting that goal, which I have already hit, I'm okay with spending whatever heck else I want to spend. So the reason is because I have already spent years being frugal, paying attention to every dollar. And now at this point, now that my only debt is like less than $20,000 of student loans, that is a very manageable monthly payment, and I already have an emergency fund, and my only goal is to save for retirement, that's the only thing I really need to worry about. So the magic is the fact that I am now able to not worry about this stuff because I've already set systems in place that make budgeting pretty easy, because my budget is making sure I'm investing. That's it. And if you are doing those things right, if you are prioritizing your debt payoff, if you are prioritizing your savings, and you are prioritizing your investing goals, everything else, who cares what you spend your money on? Spend it however the heck you want, as long as you are preparing for your future, as long as you are investing for your future. So that may not come automatically. And that's why I recommend trying the zero-based budget first, or trying an anti-budget, but we can do another episode on anti-budgets. But essentially, just prioritizing those important things like investing for your future and putting money on debt and saving for that emergency fund, that's enough. As long as you hit those goals, everything else is fair game. So that's what I wanted to talk about, because I think that when we think about getting our money right, we often see this like huge, arduous task that's going to take us years upon years upon years upon years. But sometimes it's just a couple of years of really hard work to then set yourself up for a lifetime of abundance. So that is my money tip for this week. And it kind of just came up from the conversation that you'll hear Delyanne and I having in this episode. But if you have questions about that, if you're like, okay, cool, but I feel like I need more information, send me a DM on Instagram. You can find me at Delyanne Money Coach. Again, Bear is BARE, as always. But I hope you guys find that helpful. And I hope that inspires you to try a spending plan, try a budget, because it doesn't have to be forever. It just has to be right now most of the time. So that's all I got for you today. We will get to our guest, this amazing episode. But first, before we do, I just want to remind you that we live for your ratings and reviews. So please take a second to subscribe and rate and review us. It is the way that we know we're doing good. It's the way that we know you are liking what we're putting out there, and it helps us grow as well. So if you take a second to do that, I appreciate you a ton. Feel free to take a screenshot of it and DM me so I can thank you personally. But let's get to it. Hello, and welcome back to the Money Bear podcast. Today we've got my girl Delyanne the Money Coach on, and I'm super stoked. Delyanne, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So a little background, me and Delyanne are actually in real life friends as well. So
we are.
We may have some side tangents and talk about random things, but that's why we like podcasts, right? Like, nobody wants like perfect everything.
No, I like the more conversational aspect, especially when I'm with my friends. I have a lot more fun.
Yes. And she was like, she texted me this morning. She's like, hey, aren't we doing a podcast today? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what are the topics? I was like, just you. Like, we're just going to talk about your story, girl, because you got an amazing story, that's for sure.
I'm like, no pressure.
Really?
Okay.
I don't know how to do this. I don't know. So for those who are living under a rock and may not know who you are, give us your elevator speech. Who is Delyanne the Money Coach? What do you do in real life? What do you do on the internet? Tell us
Yes.
all about it.
So I am Delyanne Barros, known as Delyanne The Money Coach on the interwebs. I am a retired attorney. I used to work as an employment attorney for 14 years. I finally was able to escape the rat race and retire from law and run my business full time starting in 2021, which was incredible. It was life changing for me. And yeah, the business has taken off since I launched it in 2020. And I teach investors how to slay the stock market. That is my signature course. And I, until recently, was also the podcast host for CNN's Diversifying. So that's another huge project that I took on this year. But yeah, I basically focus on investing and building wealth.
Yes, and a funny anecdote about her title of her course, Slay the Stock Market. When I think I told you this, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to call my course, I was like, okay, I need it to be unique, obviously. We all want it to be unique. We all want it to be catchy and something that everybody
Right.
remembers. And I was like, well, Delyanne's got slay the stock market. And like, I don't want people to slay. I want people to be lazy. I want people to chill. And so that's what I was like, you know what? We're gonna be the lazy investors course. So she inspired me indirectly, which I think I told you when we were together in Encinitas, and I was like, just so you know, you had a
Yeah.
hand in this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what I say in my class all the time is, I'm like, this is the only time you're, rewarded for being lazy. When else are you
Mhm.
rewarded for being lazy in life?
Right,
So I think
exactly.
that was a perfect title. So good
Well,
job
and I
on
love
that.
it too because it's different perspectives of like we teach the same thing. We're both talking about indexing, we're talking about the lazy way of investing, but like you're still slaying when you're doing the lazy way. That's the thing is like it's still the best way to be
Yes.
investing for most people. So it still
Yeah.
works either way.
And I
Um
like that you say that that's the best way because my pet peeve is when people say, oh, it's great for beginners.
no, I hate that.
I hate that,
It
right? I
drives
get
me
so aggravated because I'm like, no, it's not beginners. Because then it's like they're poo-pooing it, like, oh,
right.
like there's this other level that you're missing out on. No, there's no other level. Okay. The
Right.
other
Well,
level is Warren Buffett. And we're not
yes.
gonna be Warren Buffett.
Oh my gosh.
So
But even on the
stop.
Warren Buffett thing, people will be like, oh, yeah, so we're going to do what Warren Buffett says, but not what he does. I'm like, do you understand the reason that Warren Buffett recommends indexing to most people is because most people are not Warren Buffett.
Right. Also, most people don't have the time and the energy. So who's got time to sit around
No.
reading all of these, stock presentations or going to shareholder meetings? Like this is the stuff you have to do if you really want to invest in a company. Is that
And
how
then,
you want to spend your weekend?
right. And on top of it, even doing that, I love that we're already on a tangent, but we're like, let's talk about this bullshit. Um, Not only that is like even if you do all of that work there's still no guarantee that you're going to do better than
No,
the S&P 500 or the stock market, and statistically speaking you're not going to do better than what's going on in the
exactly.
actual S&P 500. So it's one of those things that like if you for those of you who are listening we will absolutely talk about what indexing is and what lazy investing is and how Delyanne teaches that, but essentially when people say that it's for beginners just know that that's total bullshit. It's good for beginners, but it's also good for not beginners as well.
It's for
So,
everybody. I tell people beginner, intermediate, advanced. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're 25. I don't care if you're 55. It's the way, the best way that is data proven
mhm.
to, be successful as an investor.
Yes, and honestly, even the people who have like the day trading courses and who are day traders, I imagine they still have a large chunk of money indexed. Like even
Absolutely.
because it's the safest thing that you could do.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm reading The Bogle Effect, which is an awesome
Mhm.
book about Jack Bogle, who popularized the index fund. And in it are a bunch. The author interviewed like 50 different financial advisors, and they all admit that they themselves put their money into index funds.
Mhm.
Like even though they're advising these other clients who want active management, they
Mhm.
put their money into index funds.
And that speaks volumes in of
Right?
itself, that the people who supposedly know more than we do are also doing the indexing. Tell them that's
Exactly.
for beginners. Tell them condescendingly, like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah. So anyway.
I love it. Well, before we talk about kind of how you teach investing and things like that, I think you have such an impressive story in terms of how you got to where you are right now. So let's talk about your story. First I want to know, what was money like for you growing up?
Yeah, the most popular, sentence that I heard growing up was, "We don't have it, so stop asking for it." Whatever it is you're asking for, before you even come home with the permission slip or whatever it is that you're asking for, the overnight trip, the whatever is going on at school that week. My mom's like, "We don't have it, so stop
Mm,
asking for it." And if we wanted something extra, we were gonna have to like hustle for it. And me and my
mhm.
sister started hustling very early. Like we would sell air pops. We would sell, what is it, airheads, bubble pops, all the candy. During Christmas, it would switch to candy canes. Like we have themes, you know? So we would hustle with our little candy. We would buy it at Walgreens and then, resell it. Hello, this is before eBay existed.
I love this.
And that extra little money that we made, we would use for things like that, to go on field trips, to buy,
Mhm.
a pretty, what's that Lisa Frank notebook? I've always wanted a Lisa Frank
Yes.
notebook.
Oh
My
my
mom
God.
never would buy us those things, and so I would go to the store and buy a little Lisa Frank notebook. So I grew up knowing that money was very scarce.
Mhm.
Money was very, very scarce. And then when my parents got divorced when I was 15, that's when everything really went off the rails. And I really had to step in as like a pseudo parent to help my mom.
Mhm.
So, I not only understood that money was scarce, I understood how precarious your situation can be when you're not financially secure. And now all of a sudden I was, like having to play this caretaker role at like
Mhm.
15 years old, which
Mhm.
was extremely stressful. So my ideas around money were always like, oh my God, I'm so scared I'm going to lose it. Right.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of like hoarding tendencies or a lot of fear around losing money, which means I had fear of like losing a job or
Mhm.
switching jobs. And that really impacted me throughout like my 20s and 30s. And I didn't start breaking those cycles until very recently.
Right. And I mean, knowing you, I feel like, would you say that you're still breaking some of those too? Because like when
Yeah.
immediately as you said that, I thought I'm working on, have you ever read Untamed by Glennon Doyle?
I haven't finished it, but yes, I'm
So
aware
I
of
just started,
it.
everyone and their mom recommended it to me when I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going through some life changes. And they're like, you got to read this book. And so started reading it. I'm almost finished with it after getting it this week. And one of the things, it comes with like a workbook where you can like go through and like figure out
Hmm.
your beliefs. And one of the questions was like, what did you believe a good daughter is growing up? Like what were you
Mm.
told a good daughter is? And as you were talking about, being the parent, taking care of your mom and taking care of situations, going out and getting your own money and things like that. One of the things I wrote down as like a good daughter doesn't need anything. They don't want for anything, because I
Mm.
had a similar situation with you growing up when that it was like, yeah, we don't have money for that. If you want to buy that, you got to go figure out a way to do that
Mhm.
yourself. So, would you say you're still like unwinding some of those thoughts today?
100%. And it's funny because mine would go a step further. Not only does a good daughter not need anything, a good daughter provides.
Mm,
Because
mhm.
that's how, well, my mom would repeatedly say that to us. She's like,
Mhm.
why did I have you guys? Like, you're here and you're supposed to be helping me, right? Whether it's like through chores, whether it's cleaning, whether it's, providing financial support. Like, that was the message, that children are supposed to take care of their parents, you
Mhm.
know? And that really impacted me. And it's funny because now I am leaning into that more than ever because I do financially support my mom. I
Mhm.
want her to have like a comfortable life. She lives in Brazil where things are really, really tough, and she works a ton. But no matter how hard you work there, you're never going to make enough. So
Right.
I'm coming from a different space now where I'm giving her this money willingly. She never asked for it. There was no pressure. And so it's coming from a much healthier place. Whereas when I was 15, it was, the situation was tougher. I felt bitter about it, right? What
Mhm.
15-year-old isn't going to feel like angry and bitter at the situation? I was frustrated. I didn't understand why this was our life. And it was a completely different dynamic.
Mhm.
But I just took this massive 2-week trip with my mom, and we're healing through a lot of that stuff. I feel
Mhm.
like having those conversations with her, keeping those lines of communication open, is going to help me undo a lot of the damage that came from those experiences when I was younger.
Yeah, no, it's so awesome that now you guys are able to develop that relationship, and it is coming from this place of abundance rather than like scarcity of like, I have no other choice. I have to support you. And like, no, it's a decision and it's going to be on my own terms.
Yeah, I mean, so much has changed, right? I mean, when back then, barely making anything, I was working full time, putting myself through college, making $28,000 a year. And when I left Florida to go to New York for law school, I told my mom, "Hey, mom, I can no longer help you financially because I'm not going to be working. I'm going to be going to law school." And she was shocked, and it was a huge hit for her because
Mm-hmm.
she was like, "I don't know what I'm going to do." My mom couldn't even pay the mortgage by herself, you
Mm.
know? And once I left Florida, that's when she packed up everything, sold everything, and moved out of the country. So it was
Oh,
that much.
wow.
Yeah. So our family was broken up at that point, right? So she left, like we were all moving out of state, and we have never been reunited since. Like we have
Mm-hmm.
all lived in different countries or different states, me and my sisters, ever since. So that was like a huge moment, right? That was like turning a corner for us. um and like I carry that burden with me for many,
Mm-hmm.
many years, and I felt guilty about it. But at some point, you have to say, like, I'm entitled to my own life too. I'm
Yes.
entitled to make decisions for me too. Like, who's going to look out for me? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I had no safety net. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
talk to my friends, and they were like, oh, yeah, if something happens, I can call my mom, or my parents bought me this car, or my parents helped me put together this application for college. I've never had any of that. I've had to do everything by myself. So
Mm-hmm.
not having a safety net gives you this kind of hunger that it's hard to explain. Like, anybody who's been in survival mode knows what I'm talking about. They understand, like, there's no other choice basically.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that fierce independence that comes out of dealing with traumas like that and having
Yeah.
to, have literally no other choice. But damn, when you said that, I don't think I ever connected the dots before that the time that your mom left was after you were like, I can't financially support you anymore. The amount of guilt you must have felt, like I can feel it. Like I would be
Yeah.
like, wow, this is my fault, but it's not. And that's the thing, is it's so hard to like unwind that and like be like, no, 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 this is not my fault. I read a quote last night that said, one of the biggest burdens that a parent can put on a kid is not living their life, and like having that burden of your parents just never living their life for themselves because they
Right.
were busy, raising you and things like that. And I think that falls into it of like, I don't know about you, but in your course, do you often feel like a lot of people come into the course with the goal of learning how to invest for their kids before they learn how to invest for their
Yes.
retirement? To me, that's the same thing. And it's like, you have to live your life, and living your life involves saving for your future and making sure that things are
Yes.
covered. It's
Absolutely,
wild.
because it's like kicking the can down the road, right? You're just putting off like something that's going to be extremely stressful. Like, now for your kid, you're like, oh, well, I don't want them to have to stress about student loans and everything. Well, later on, they're going to have to stress not only about their kids and themselves, but now they're also going to have to take care of you because
Hmm.
you didn't plan for a retirement, right?
Right.
So there has to be a balance somewhere. And it's hard for parents. I know it is. But I tell them, I'm like, your retirement has to come first.
Hmm.
Teach your kids about how to manage their money, how to invest, how to keep their student loans as low as possible. All of the tips and tricks that you learned, pass that on, even if
Hmm.
you can't pay the bill yourself. But it's hard for parents. I mean, I understand if I were to have kids, which I'm child free by choice,
Yeah.
I would want to give them everything too,
Right,
right?
right. Oh, especially if you didn't have it. But it's like, to think about it too, like retirement's a whole lot more expensive than student loans are. So
Yeah,
it's
there's
like you got to
no,
be
and there are no
prepared for that.
loans, right? You can't take loans for
Yes.
retirement.
You cannot take loans for retirement. The amount of times that I've said that, it's like, yeah, we can absolutely prepare for your children, but we need to prepare for you first. So,
Yeah. So I took care of myself first. I set myself up financially. When I was like secure, that's when I went back to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm now at a place where I can, if you don't want to work, you don't have to. I'm going to send you
hmm.
enough money where my mom does not have to work if she doesn't want to. So she works because she likes it, because it keeps her
Hmm.
busy, but she does not have to. I cover
Yeah.
all of her bills. And I came to her up with that once I was set up financially. When I had enough money, I felt secure. I'm like, okay, I'm at a good place where now I can provide for her. And, what's the point of becoming a millionaire if you can't like shower the ones you love with, comfort and peace of mind and do all those things? And then I just took her on this luxurious 2-week trip to Portugal. And those things really, really make me happy, right?
Yeah.
To spend that quality time with my mom, to know that my mom is going to live a little bit more of a softer life, because my mom's had a very hard
Yes.
life. I want to give her, like, what do we call it? Soft life, luxury life, Tempur-Pedic life. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, you know,
Tempur-Pedic life. Oh my God,
like,
that's amazing.
she deserves that too. So I want her to, she just took her first flight in first class.
Uh,
And I was like, did you sleep? Because she had a lie flat. And she's like,
yeah.
no, I was so excited. I was pressing all the buttons. I was watching all the movies. She's like, I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to miss any of the food. It looked
Oh my
amazing.
gosh,
So
that's
she was
so
up.
precious.
Yeah, she was up all night, like, so excited. And I'm like, how awesome that I got to give her that experience.
Oh, I like even just hearing you talk about it makes me excited at the idea of ever giving my mom that experience as well, or my dad. And it's like, it's such a cool gift, and like to be able to do it on your own terms as well. And also, I
Yeah,
couldn't help but think, I was like, girl, you don't need kids. You're taking care of your mom now. Like,
exactly. Exactly. It's
oh,
funny. She likes to say that too. The other day, she joked about it. She's like, I'm your kid. I'm like, Mom, you're not supposed to say that.
she's loving it. She's like, I don't care. Just keep the first class flights
Let me
coming.
tell you, the pressure of having children has never come off so fast.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, I love that. There's the secret, guys. If you guys are dealing with parents who are
Yeah.
like, hey, give me your children. Why aren't you having grandbabies? Like, why aren't you doing this? Just be like, how about first class instead?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so take us through kind of like your money management journey, because going from growing up with like having nothing, having to support your family, and then, eventually getting to the place where you're a well-paid lawyer, to now, she didn't mention this in her elevator speech, but like she was so humble. She's made $2 million in the last 2 years. She's like, oh yeah, and I just like own Slay the stock market. I'm like, bitch, you're a multimillionaire with that business. That's a multi-million-dollar business at this point. So tell us kind of like, what was your first steps to even learning about how to do money, how to do this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think I started. I will say, my parents gave me two lessons. And one was get an education. That's how you get ahead in this country. And two, always protect your credit. Right.
Mhm.
And so I've always been like fiercely protective of my credit. So even though I may not have, a lot of money in the bank, I didn't know anything about investing, but I knew that credit was important. So I've
Mhm.
always had like a perfect credit score. I've never had any issues with my credit. And I think that very basic premise really set me up nicely, right, for other
Right.
things, because whenever I would go apply for loans or credit cards, or even, get a lease on an apartment, I was already off to a good start because I had good credit. So many
Mhm.
people don't even have that, right? So that's like one of the few money lessons that my parents gave me, and I really took it to heart. It just makes me wonder, wow, if they just taught me like a little bit more,
A couple
imagine how
more
much
things.
further I would have taken that. Like, incredible, right? So that's why it's so important to teach kids early on.
Even if
um
you only know those 2 things, because
yes.
like you said, yes, like the fact that you were aware of your credit score is huge, especially in minority communities in this country. And the fact that like were already aware of your credit score probably prevented you from going into credit card debt, which is a massive issue in of itself.
Yeah,
So it's like you don't even realize some of the impacts of like the little bits that you do know could teach your children. So don't hold those back.
absolutely. Yeah. And I always did pretty good about putting money aside. I just knew that having money saved was important, right? Even if it didn't have a name to it, I didn't know what that money was going to be for someday. I knew that it was important because shit happens. And once my apartment was broken into, and I had just bought a brand new computer, so obviously somebody in my building must have seen me coming in
Mm.
with the box. And the next day, somebody broke into my apartment and stole it.
Oh,
So it was so heartbreaking. Oh my God. It was like a $400 Dell, which was so much money for me. It was my biggest, most expensive purchase up to
yeah.
that moment. And I was like, oh my God. And then my boss at the time was able to wrangle like a used, I had bought like a beautiful laptop. She got me like this clunky old desktop, but I was grateful for it because I'm like, it's better than nothing.
Right.
But it was so heart wrenching. And so I've had so many experiences like that where I've been on the brink of something and then something goes wrong. And it really, really makes you want to save, right? So that you can
Mhm.
feel safe. You want to see those
Mhm.
numbers in your bank account so that you check your bank account and you just feel safer. So saving has always been like natural for me, but the frustration was going beyond that. Like I couldn't get beyond the saving. I'm like, what is there on the other side of saving, right? People say it's supposed to be real estate. You're supposed to buy property, and then I chased that for years in New York in New York State. Everybody knows in New York City, the real estate is very competitive. It's like almost impossible. And so I chased that for years and wasn't able to make it happen. I had 3 deals fall through, and so I'm feeling very frustrated. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I did it. I made it. I'm making the 6-figure salary. I'm an attorney. I'm living in New York City. And yet like my net worth was super stagnant. It was not growing. And I would kind of talk to my coworkers a little bit about it, but nobody even mentioned like, hey, have you thought about like investing beyond your 401k? Like nobody talked about money.
Right.
And it was only when I discovered it on my own, like financial independence, that all the pieces started to come together. And literally within like 6 to 8 months, I had a plan to retire, leave the legal field, right? The plan was like, okay, I'm going to invest. I'm going to quit my law job in 7 years. I'm going to pay off all my student loans. I had sketched out this whole plan, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God. Like, because my thinking was I'm going to be an attorney until I'm 65 years old.
Right.
I'm stuck here.
Right.
I have no other choice.
That's the narrative the United States tells us.
Right. And I hated my job. Oh my God, I was so unhappy as an attorney. And I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I have to do this until I'm 65 years old. So to go from that to now seeing like a light at the end of the tunnel, it was revolutionary. Like it changed everything. So,
and how did you discover the financial independence states? Was there like one blog or one podcast that just kind of like started everything for you?
Oh my God, I wish I paid more attention, because when I delve into a new project or a new topic, I just, start hyper consuming things. And so I forget where the origin point was. So not a great origin story, but I know that it started first as a debt-free journey. And I think that's where a lot of us have started.
100%. All of us start out that way. And like now these days, it's one of my biggest regrets in paying off how much I paid off in such a short period of time. But it's what I think the reason is it's the easy answer. It's like, you only have to do one thing. Yeah. You just have to pay off your debt.
And it's the only thing you're aware of. You know about your debt. You don't know about this thing because you haven't discovered it yet. But you're like, I know I have this debt and I know I don't want it anymore. Yep. So let me focus on. So then I think I just started Googling like, how to pay off debt faster or something. And then you start down the rabbit hole. And and then of course I found the loudest voice in the room at the time, which was who? Dave Ramsey. So I found him, I started listening to his podcast, and I'm like, I started getting anxiety from it. I started getting anxiety about my debt. I started getting anxiety about my situation. It wasn't making me feel better. It was making me feel worse.
Right.
And it was making me do things in a very like drastic way. I was thinking like, oh, I need to stop spending completely and just throw all my money at debt and like, don't live your life. And I was consuming his content, right? Which is that's what he tells you to do. And I was becoming more and more extreme in my behavior. And then I realized I'm like, this is not what I want. This is not how I want to live my life. I'm like, this is way too extreme. I'm not like, I was poor for many, many years. I know what that's like. I felt like I was back there. I'm like, people call it frugal, but I'm like, this feels like back when I was living paycheck to paycheck and I could barely afford anything. Why would I want to I worked so hard to get out of that situation. Why would I put myself back there?
Like willingly.
Willingly. So I was like, no. And then, you keep falling down the rabbit hole, and eventually you find like the FIRE community, the people pursuing financial independence and all of that. And then it just started blossoming from there.
Yeah, for sure. And you, if I remember correctly, you really didn't because you're kind of naturally frugal, even though you wouldn't identify as somebody who's frugal, but knowing you, I know you kind of are, because you don't spend money. You're like, you don't have a lot of wants. You don't have a lot of needs. There are certain things that you will spend lavishly on.
Yes.
But generally, you seem like especially when comparing you to, by the way, we forgot to mention, her sister is Natalia, I Speak Social, who was on the podcast. I think she was like the 2nd or 3rd episode. But we all know Natalia is bougie as fuck. And you, on the other hand, you're much more reserved, I would say. And
I am.
Is that why you never really needed, or why I would assume anyway, you never really needed a real budget? Like you did the anti-budget, right?
Yeah, like for me, it's like I prioritize the things I want to spend on. And
Mhm.
then, but first it's like as long as I'm saving and investing according to my goals,
Mhm.
then everything else is like fair game. I can spend guilt free. And that's
Yep.
really like how I think you and I are trying to encourage people to
Mhm.
live, right? We don't want people
100%.
living inside of spreadsheets or inside of like, net worth tracking apps or things like that. We want you to prioritize your goals and then spend the rest guilt free. So I kind of naturally lived my life like that already because I get very anxious tracking every dollar. I tried it. I saw
Mhm.
people who were doing it and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And I tried it for a while. I had the crazy spreadsheets and all of that. And immediately my ADHD, was like, no, girl, like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot keep up with this. It was so consuming. And again, it was hyping up my anxiety.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do it. But yeah, there are things that I don't value. I drive a 2017 Nissan. When I moved to California, I bought a used car. When I upgraded to this apartment that I'm renting, this is like a splurge to me. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. This is the biggest apartment I've ever had in my life. I've lived mostly in like studio or 1-bedroom
Well,
apartments.
also,
Uh,
can we just highlight that this was an upgrade for you? And this is somebody who has made $2 million in the last 2 years. How much do you spend on rent?
Now, 2,800.
That's it. $2,800 a month
But
living
a
in
lot of
San
people would
Diego.
be like, "Wow, that's a lot of money,"
For
right?
sure, for sure. But I just want to like highlight the fact that you make $1 million a year and you're paying $2,800 in rent a month. Like I love that you're still at a place that you love and you're prioritized, but you don't have to upgrade to this like $10,000 a month place because it's like what the standard recommendation is like 30% of your gross income, and it's
Right.
like 30% of your gross income would be 30 grand.
Exactly. That's why I don't like formulas
Right,
because
I
those
agree.
formulas they're too cookie cutter,
They're
right?
they don't make sense because it's like, why would you if that's not what you value?
Yeah. And like also again, it all goes back to my goals, which is I'm trying to retire early. I'm
Right.
like literally trying to retire early. So when you're trying to retire early, you don't just go and spend 30% of your income on housing. You put a good chunk of that towards saving and investing so
Mhm.
that you can retire early. So by not inflating my lifestyle, I'm able to reach retirement much faster and still live a very comfortable life. Like I said, I just took my mom on this very luxurious trip to Portugal. It probably cost me, see, I can't even tell you exactly because I didn't add it up,
'Cause you
but
don't care.
I don't care. I think I spent anywhere between 15, like like I would say 12 to $15,000.
Yeah.
Between me and my mom, probably more. What am I talking about? It's probably close to 18. $18,000. I flew my mom. I flew first class. We stayed in all luxury hotels. We ate at the best restaurants. Anything my mom touched and wanted to buy, I bought it for her. That's how I spend my money, right? Like
I
that.
love it.
When I'm with somebody that I love, oh, I love my love language when I'm showing love is gift giving.
Mhm.
So when I'm receiving love, I don't like to receive gifts. So I like quality time, acts of service.
Mhm.
But when I'm showing love, I love to give gifts. And so that's where I like to spend my money. I'm not frugal with that at all. Right.
Yeah, and I love that because I think it's such a balanced approach because it's not like you're not 100% one way or the other. You're not like super, super frugal. I'm going to save all every dollar that I make. You're still living your life, but you're living it in a way that's completely aligned with your values, I would say.
Yeah. And I would say also Natalie has helped me a lot with everybody calls her Natalia. I call her Natalie because that was her name growing up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sis.
We're gonna have
Um,
to, or I have to send
I
this
know.
to her and be like, all right, go to 29
Yeah.
minutes and 53 seconds.
It's Natalia. It's Natalia. But anyway, she's helped me upgrade my life a lot. I started getting more massages. I've upgraded my like skincare routine. We use like fancy skincare creams and things now
Yes.
and potions. So she's helped me, like she's like, you need to celebrate each launch, like go and do something lavish for yourself. And so learning how to spend my money has also been like a learning curve.
Yeah, well,
Re-
and it's going back to those beliefs of as a
yeah.
kid is like it's shameful for me to want something when we don't have money. It's scary for me to spend this money. What
Yes.
if it all disappears? So I love that she's like guiding you through and being like, "Girl, first class."
For real. I never would have imagined in a million years that I would ever be spending that much on a vacation. Like that's like beyond my wildest dreams.
I love it, but like so cool that you're now living that dream. So for you, when you transferred out of being a lawyer to doing Delyanne the Money Coach full time,
Yeah.
what was kind of your thing? Like, what was the thing that you're like, all right, I will quit my job when?
Mm, yes. So I was like, I will quit my job when my business is exceeding what I make per year at
Mhm.
my full-time job, right? Which honestly, I thought was going to be hard. I thought it was going to be really
Oh my god,
hard.
I like took a sip of water at the wrong time because I like you're cracking me up. I love that you're like, I thought it was gonna be hard, but then it happened in like 2 months.
Yeah, it was insane how fast it happened. Okay, so let me give the real timeline because it didn't happen overnight.
No.
Um, I started my business January 2020. I was doing one-on-one coaching, right? Which I think was a good way to start because you got to learn who you're servicing. You really have
Mhm.
to put you got to tweak your process. You got to make sure you're actually delivering a transformation. So I did that for 8 months and I would coach anywhere between like 15 to 20 people a month. And that was quickly burning me out. I'm like, holy shit, I'm not going to be able to keep up with this, business model. And that's when me and my sister started putting together Slay the Stock Market. And she's like, okay, you need to start create this process that you've created, put it into a course. So that's when in September 2020, I launched Slay the Stock Market. My first launch was $60,000. I called my sister screaming at the top of my lungs. I called my best friend screaming at the top of my lungs. And I was like, I just made $60,000 in a week. What the hell is this?
That's
And so
insane.
I was just thinking, this is a fluke. You always think it's a fluke,
A
right?
hundred
Your first
percent.
launch, you're like, it's a fluke. It's a crazy thing that just happened to me. And honestly, you go on to think that for the next 6 months. So even though I replicated it and then it kept growing and it kept growing, and then I was having 6-figure launches, and I was like, okay, I just made what I make in a year as an attorney, I made in a month, right? After taxes, because I was making as an attorney $200,000 a year, but after taxes, it was like close to 110, 120. Yeah,
Right.
near, gotta love taxes. So I was making, in a month what I was making as in a year as an attorney. And that moment, I was like, this is it.
Dude,
I'm
that's
doing the thing.
yeah, that's insane. Because it was you said from January until September is when you were doing one-on-one coaching.
Yeah, September 2020, I launched like the stock market. By March of 2021, I quit my full-time job.
That's crazy. Also,
So
I'm shocked you didn't quit earlier. I would have been
I
like,
thought that was
"Oh my god," I've been like, "I had a 60K month quitting my job." Like, I'm not even giving 2 weeks. I'm done.
I mean, I'm shocked that no, I thought October, November, December, January. What is that? That's not even barely 6 months.
Right.
I thought that was really fast. I was like, I can't believe I'm going to quit my whole career that I've
Oh,
had for 14 years.
that is really fast for
It
sure.
was
It's just
wild.
crazy. Like, and like the fact that from the very beginning you were having those crazy launches and it kept growing is just it's amazing. It's amazing.
So when I quit my job, my boss and all my coworkers were like, well, like, I don't get it. Where are you going? What's next? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm like, I have this little side hustle, so we'll see if it'll go
This
somewhere.
little side hustle and then
Yeah,
boom, she's featured in every single publication known to man.
yeah. But they wouldn't know that because I blocked them way before I started this business. Honestly, that is my biggest tip. Block your coworkers, block your bosses, hide your coworkers, hide your wives
That's what
from
I was thinking too.
from your social media. So they're not up in your business because I was working full time while running my business,
Yeah.
also like on the side. And some employers get a bug up their butt about that, and they'll
Yeah,
make your
it's
life more difficult.
100%. It's happened to other creators in the space where like they were found out and they were given the choice of like either you got to end this or you're going to have to quit. And it's like, well, deuces.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, don't tell your coworkers what you're doing. Like keep it to yourself. Like I think when it comes to work, I really keep people at, arm's length. Like
Hmm.
that's my workplace. It is
Yeah.
separate from my personal life. And, as an employment attorney, That is the best way to be. I know that a lot of people are like, oh no, but I met my best friend at work. And I'm like, you're taking a chance. Hopefully that person is trustworthy. If you're
And it
gossiping
works
with them
out.
and telling them things and it works out. But I've also heard all of the other horror stories.
Yeah, and the horror stories are almost, they just don't even make the success stories worth it sometimes, I feel like. And if I remember right, you had a TikTok go super viral talking
Yes.
about like, your coworkers are not your friends, your coworkers are not your family. And I feel like that like whole idea of like our workplace as family really started with millennials. And it's like
Yeah.
I think Gen Z has it figured out and then they're like,
Yes.
fuck this. I show up here for a paycheck and like
Yeah.
then I'm out.
Yeah. They're like, I love how they've rebranded Acturate Your Wage to
Mhm.
quiet quitting. That's like the new thing
Yes.
now. But like we're quiet quitting, which means basically just doing your job. You're not going above and beyond. You're not working overtime. You're not volunteering for shit. You're just gonna do the job that you're being paid to do.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, what a
Yes.
concept.
What a concept. And also just like this idea that like your workplace is not your personality. Like it's not
No,
who you are. It is not defining any, where I think millennials, we went a little too far in that direction of like your workplace has to be your purpose. What you do has to be your life,
no,
like everything. And it's like I think that's more harmful
no.
than it is
How can you
beneficial.
It's funny because now that we're on the other side of it, we have our own companies. It's so ridiculous. It's like me hiring my virtual assistant and being like, you need to share my mission. You need to be just as passionate about my business as that makes me a lot more money.
Right.
That's ridiculous. Like
It's
I
like,
pay
how could
her.
we expect that? We would expect
Yeah,
we would expect them to be as excited about our business as we pay them.
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
the amount of which I pay you is the amount of excitement I expect.
Exactly. If you want to be more excited, pay them a commission. You
Mhm.
have the, pay them a commission on top of whatever salary you're paying them. Give them some kind of incentive to be invested. Because if you're
Yes.
just paying somebody a salary, like, what's the incentive for me
Right.
killing myself? Like, come
Right.
on. And I think these business owners have like lost touch with reality. Like that's the
Mhm.
reality of it. I don't expect that for my assistant. I don't know why my bosses expected that from me. I think they just drank the Kool-Aid and they just push that shit down on you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, and it's
yeah.
like it was the culture, and I think the culture luckily is slowly changing. It just took a really long time to get to that place. So,
Is that Logan?
so my sister just got in the background. She's got, what did you get? Oh, she's gotten really into like doing face massages and stuff, and so she just got a Amazon package of something that you can like freeze and then use it to like massage yourself. Delyanne wants to speak.
Oh,
Come here.
I know exactly what she's talking. I
See?
have one of those, the rollers.
So she has a roller, but she also just got this. Sorry for those of you who are listening to the podcast and can't see this,
So
but on
fill it
YouTube.
with water and freeze it.
Okay.
And
Oh, it's like a giant.
It's like a
and then-
popsicle
and then you
almost.
got like a popsicle.
Oh yeah.
And it
That's
also
kinda cool.
came with one of those guys.
Oh, and a little gua sha guy.
But I think
one of-
that's
one of
culture
those things.
appropriation that they sent back.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was what was happening in the background over at the Clobear mobile headquarters.
Mobile.
we go everywhere.
We'll come to you.
We will come to you. So anyway, all right, I want to get into what is, like we were talking earlier about how, the finance bros on the internet will make fun of us for teaching indexing and claiming it to be as good as it is. Can you, for somebody who is listening to this for the first time, they've never heard of indexing, don't understand oh, hi, Oliver. They don't understand what we're talking about. Can you give us kind of like a summary of what even is slaying the stock market or being lazy with the stock market?
Yeah, what I tell people is, you don't want to try to beat the stock market. That's the game that all of these hedge funds and all of these day traders are trying to play. We want to be the stock market. We want to ride the coattails of the people trying to beat the stock market. We actually benefit off of them, believe it or not. Like and this is what Jack Bogle, who the man who popularized index funds through Vanguard, this is what he would say. He's like, let them do the hard work. You get to sit in the back and just like benefit off of the average, right? So the idea here is that instead of picking one stock, which is hella risky, you never know what's going to happen. You never know if you're picking like the next Enron or, the next Peloton that's going to like, completely nosedive.
Mhm.
Instead of picking a single stock, you're going to buy a piece of everything. You're going to buy a piece of the entire stock market. And what are the chances that every stock, every company in the stock market is going to go to zero? Because that's always the question that I get. I'm sure you get all the time too.
Yep.
Is, oh my God, but what if everything goes to zero? And I'm like, is that possible? Sure. So is the zombie apocalypse,
Yeah.
right? Like those
Right.
things are like equally possible. That's
Right.
how possible it is. So if everything goes to zero, we're officially in a zombie apocalypse. Something has definitely gone wrong.
Terribly
and
wrong.
Terribly wrong. And probably money isn't even going to be like a real thing anymore, because you're
Yes.
not, even the money that you have like in your savings account, you won't be able to access it.
Right. And
Because
that's what
banks are traded on the stock market too.
Yes, and that's what I always tell people too is I'm like, okay, if everything goes to zero, if 500 of the largest companies in the US go to zero, we're going to have a zombie apocalypse. Like something is going on. Like and
Yeah.
like we will not be concerned at all. I feel like every finance creator has like an analogy that they use to explain the stock market. Sorry, Voodoo's in the background meowing. But so for me, when I'm trying to explain what an index fund is, I always compare it to like if you go to the grocery store, you don't know what chocolate bar you're craving. So, you could take the risk and buy one chocolate bar. It's like picking an individual stock, hoping it's like going to fulfill that need. Or you could buy a bag of chocolates with all of the chocolate bars inside of it, thousands of different options, and use that instead. What's your analogy? How do you explain it to your students?
I use the it's a flea market. So it's
Hmm.
like you're going into, so it's literally a market. I think it helps people visualize that the stock market is an actual market. You come in, there's somebody selling something and there's people buying. Like it goes both ways. And I tell them each little stand in the flea market is like a company, and each of the little tchotchkes under the stand is like buying a share of a company. So sometimes the tchotchke will be worth a lot of money, and sometimes the tchotchke will be worthless, right? So you could get really lucky and buy an antique by accident and come out making a ton of money, or you could think it was an antique to begin with, and then it turns out it was a complete fake copy, and then you lost money, right? So that's usually my analogy. And so instead of going to each little stand and taking your pick, you're instead just going to buy a little tchotchke from all of the stands.
I like that.
And that's pretty much the index fund.
Yes, yeah, no, it really is. I love the tchotchke analogy. The other one is like, why buy the needle in the haystack when you can just buy the whole haystack?
I think that's like Vogel's favorite, and he would repeat that all the time.
Yeah, everybody's got their own.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's such a revolutionary concept because the stock market is extremely intimidating. Stock picking is extremely intimidating. So when you come out and you're like, oh my God, not only is there something better, and it's easier. Like, what's the catch, right? So people are always asking me, what's the catch? And the catch is that there's always risk with every investment. No investment is 100% risk-free.
I mean, even bonds are not risk-free. I mean, if you look at the BND performance, which I think has like a collective sampling of all the bonds in the US, the last time I looked at BND, it was like down 10% this year. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is. There's no such thing as risk-free, which we could do a whole episode on people talking about risk-free life insurance products. But we won't bore you guys with that today.
Yeah, please. That topic gets under my skin.
Yes. All right. So what would you say are your biggest money tips, either in terms of like your own experiences and like what really helped you, or just in general, somebody who's getting started in the space and wants to learn? What would your 3 biggest tips be?
I will say one is face your demons, heal your money trauma, right? Because until you really face your money trauma, it's going to be really hard for you to change certain behaviors. And it's going to be difficult for you to dream in a way that's not coming from like a defensive place.
100%.
So if you want to play offense, if you want to dream big, if you want to expand like what you're capable of, like do whatever you got to do to tackle those demons. Until I did that with my sister and my mom, and we like worked through a lot of our issues, I wasn't able to like invite the abundance that I have into my life right now.
Well, and also like the mental space. Like I could not have ever gotten my money right if I didn't deal with my depression and anxiety first. It's like those things are bigger barriers to more than we realize. And what I also think that I have learned now, and maybe this is similar for you, is that the things you need to unlearn will evolve when you level up. It's like the
Yes.
more we level up, the more it's not like our problems disappear. It's just they
Right.
change and we get better problems. And so it's like that's kind of a constant redirecting and refiguring out that I think we all have to do, because then when you get to that abundance stage, something feels wrong, something feels
Yeah.
off, and you have to like figure out and work through that as well.
Absolutely. I love that. The other thing, the second tip I would say is find a way to increase your income, whether it's through your current job, whether you need to like talk to your boss about getting a raise, a promotion. But really, what I really would love to encourage people to do is really think about starting a side hustle or a business, because it's a game changer. Like it's a game changer just knowing that you have money coming from another source. I think that will give you more peace of mind, because so many of us are so fearful at work all the time. And I know, because I live like this, where you're just like that constant millennial anxiety. Oh, my boss is calling me on a Friday for a meeting. I must be getting fired. I haven't done anything wrong, but I must be getting fired.
They didn't use an exclamation point when they reached out to me, so they clearly hate me.
Yeah.
My sister, who is my virtual assistant, has literally messaged me and said, "Are you mad at me?" And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, you've just been using periods." I'm like, no, I was like, sometimes when I'm trying to do something really quickly, I'm very direct. And I have to like remember, like, okay, now other people work for me. So I have to like remember that I can't just be like super demanding all the time.
Oh boy. I definitely don't use it. I don't think I use as many exclamation points with my virtual assistant. So I hope she knows.
You got to check in with your virtual assistant.
It's not a problem.
They're like, "Are you okay with the fact that I never use exclamation points?"
Sorry, I don't use emojis. But yeah, increase your income, find something that lights you up so that you don't feel burned out, because I know what that's like also to work your 9 to 5 and you're like, now you want me to like, do the side hustle after work. So it really does need to be something that lights you up, that interests you, because you're going to need that motivation to like push through the want to just sit on your couch and do nothing, which
100.
I totally understand.
100%. And I love that that was your second tip, because it's like, you can only do so much if you're not making a lot of money. And it's like so many finance creators leave the income out of the equation. And it's like, that's one of the most important things is like, eventually there's only so much you can cut back. That's it. It's like, but there is no ceiling to how much you can make. And especially if you have your own business, there is no ceiling to how much money you could make. And that's the wild thing.
Absolutely. And then my last tip, of course, has to be related to investing, because that's my joy.
That's what you do.
If you're going to invest, you need to invest with a 10-year horizon, right? This is what I tell people. I'm like, if you don't understand that you're investing for at least a minimum of 10 years, anything less than that is honestly getting closer and closer to gambling. Like the shorter that timeline gets, the closer you are to getting to gambling. When Chloe and I talk about, the stock market has an 8 to 10% yearly return, when we're using that number, it means that you're invested for at least a 10-year period in order to lock in that return.
Right. Yes.
When you start investing for shorter periods, you are risking that return. And so I really want people to think like, I'm putting this money into the stock market. Bye. I'm not going to see you for at least 10 years and just forget about it. Cause I know, since the market's turned this year, I've gotten a lot of DMs where people are like, oh my God, I just started, my account's been down like since I started. And I'm like, oh, when did you start? And they're like, oh, last year.
Right.
Okay.
Or December,
Right. I mean, I've been investing since 2011, I'm like, I've seen the ups and downs. Like I'm still up, even though we're, down 15, whatever we are now, 15, 16% this year. I'm still up over that 10-year period.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Well, and there's been studies that have shown, I always bring up the BlackRock study that showed that it was almost 100-year time frame. It was like a 90-year time frame where they showed that after 15 years of investing and holding on to that investment, your chances of losing money were like 0.2%.
Exactly.
Like the likelihood of you losing money the longer you hold on to an investment, the less swinging the pendulum gets. It's like it chills out a lot.
Exactly.
I agree. And I think that I have a lot of people who ask like, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house in, 3 to 5 years, and I want to invest the money for the down payment. And I was like, if you're going to do that, you need to understand that you are risking your down payment. Like, there is no guarantee that what is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be a positive return for you, even if you make it a low risk portfolio. So you really have to ask yourself, like, am I willing to lose 10 to 40% of my down payment because I happen to be investing in the stock market when the market's down? So I think that's a really good tip for most people. Even people who do take the risk of doing the short term, they just really need to understand the risks.
Yeah, I just tell people, if you are going to do a shorter term, don't go all in. So don't invest your entire down payment. Maybe you do 40% of your down payment or 50% of your down payment, and the other 50 you keep in a high yield savings account, right?
Yep.
So do a little bit of a mix, so you're not, completely locked in if something were to happen and you have to sell your stocks at the bottom.
Right. Exactly. I love it. Great tips. Now, I have one final question that I didn't prepare you for, but Natalia might have told you what it is. This is something that I ask everybody. And I don't know if I've ever heard yours or if yours is going to be different from Natalia's, but what would you say your very first money memory is?
I think my very first money memory was unfortunately, it's not a great one.
That's okay.
It's not a great one because my poor mom. We were at a bus stop and there was like a little candy stand at the bus stop, usually those guys selling something. And so I asked my mom if I wanted a piece of candy, and she was like, no, we don't have any money. And so we're getting on the bus and I start throwing a fit, crying and everything. So needless to say, I was punished when I got home. She basically didn't ignore me the entire ride. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And then when I got home, I got what was coming to me. But yeah, it was at that moment that it's a very visceral memory. My mom remembers it too. And she doesn't like it when I bring it up because she gets upset that she reacted that way. But I'm like, I remember how old my mom was when I was born. My mom was 19 years old when she had me. So that probably happened when she was 22.
Oh my God.
So imagine being 22, 23, riding a public bus and your kid is screaming their head off over a piece of candy.
Literally, I feel like I would lose my shit. I can't. I cannot judge parents because it's there are days when Logan makes me lose my shit. And I'm like, it's a dog.
Right.
She's last night, she got into the trash when I was out of the room for an hour. I was out of the room for an hour and I come back and the trash is everywhere. And I'm just looking at her like, ma'am, you need to go into the bathroom right now. I'm going to lock you in there.
I'm like, you need to have a Fort Knox type of trash where that dog cannot figure out how to get into it.
I know. I'm literally last night was the last time I would ever think that she would get into it. But the best case scenario is I have to have a closet for the trash can because she does not give a fuck. She will get into it.
Sounds like a girl I would hang out with.
I know, right? That's what's so awful about it is I'm a little proud of her.
She's I knows what I want and I likes what I want. So
she's and you know what? The punishment is worth it. If I have to spend 15 minutes in the bathroom, worth it.
So and just to go full circle on that, that story, as sad as it is, is why I work so hard as I do, but it's also why I take the time to reward my inner child. So whenever there's anything that's kind of goofy or silly, that's, that will make my inner child happy, I take that extra time to nurture that because we have to reparent ourselves.
Yes, right? 100%. What's something that you've done for your inner child recently?
What did I do recently? I bought a paddleboard.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yes.
I love that.
That was so fun. Or what we're about to do. We're about to go to Universal Studios and run around like little kids at a park. And, I haven't done that in ages.
Me neither. It's been at least a decade, I would say. Because Universal Studios I've been to, I haven't been to Disney World since I was probably 8 years old. So it'll be fun. I'm excited.
Exactly. Me too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Before we let you go, tell us, where can people find you? What do you got going on? We will leave links down to it down in the show notes.
Yes, you can find me mostly on Instagram. That's where I live, at Delyanne The Money Coach. You can also find me on TikTok, on Twitter. And my website, DelyanneTheMoneyCoach.com.
Awesome. And she hosts a free investing class once a month as well. When's your next one coming up?
The next one won't be, I think, until September 20th. 20th? Yeah, that's right. September 20th.
I think this will be coming out around the same time. So you guys check out that link down below. If not, you can get on her wait list. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Delyanne is the GOAT, and she has been such a good friend of mine, as well as a great mentor as I've grown in the finance creator space as well. I feel blessed to have her as a friend. So, hope you guys enjoyed her story. I hope you learned something new. And as always, since we're talking about money, please keep in mind that nothing on this show is intended to be financial advice. It's for educational purposes only. If you are trying to figure out more about your own financial situation, I always recommend consulting with a financial professional. But if you'd like to see our full terms and conditions, head on over to clobear.com and just do a quick search for terms and conditions. Logan's coming up by that microphone. But anyhow, if you guys listen, Logan, get down. Come on, get down. If you guys are listening and you're like, wow, I would really like to get my money right, keep in mind, once a month, I host a free investing class, and I've got a link to that down below. And I also have a free money guide that has 30 pages of resources and templates and freebies to get you started on your money journey. So be sure to download that and come to my free class. But if you guys found today's information helpful and entertaining, be sure to do us a huge favor and rate, review, and subscribe. It helps us grow out a lot. I can't speak. It helps us out a lot. So we appreciate you doing that. And if you did it yourself, please take a screenshot and DM me so I can thank you myself. But it helps us out a lot, and we really appreciate it. So that's all I got for you guys this week. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.